Hello, welcome to another series of Meet the Experts here at NEMA Partners. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing Dr. Jabon Moore. Dr. Jabon Moore is a nationally board certified chiropractic physician and acupuncturist, and he practices functional medicine, looking specifically for the root cause of illness and treating them through his natural protocols. I personally love the information that he shares online on Instagram, and I've been following him for a while, so I'm very excited for him to be here with us today and share his wealth of knowledge. Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is definitely a topic that comes up all the time in my clinic, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. So I want to start talking a little bit. You focus on root cause medicine. So some people may not be so familiar with that. A lot of times we go to our conventional doctors or our primary care physicians, which are not really addressing this side of medicine. Can you share a little bit about what root cause medicine is, what that approach is, and how that's different?
Yeah, for sure. So root cause medicine is the concept that there is a cause for your disease. So we're looking for what that cause is, not the smoke that's coming off the fire. So not the symptoms that you're dealing with. So a lot of times when you meet practitioners, doctors, you start with Western medicine when you have a problem. That's what most people do. And if that's not solving the problem, then they go and look for the next step, which can be things like diet or exercise. You hear a lot of those. Eventually, you might hear about getting into saunas or taking a few supplements for your nutrient deficiencies through lab work. And then it just keeps going down that path where you find people that are more and more and more educated. So they might be educated in candida yeast and food allergies. And then from there, it goes into maybe Lyme disease and then to parasites and mold. And then finally, when you get down to the bottom, the people that have dealt with all of these things and they understand the nervous system and the immune system responses that are happening within that. So in root cause, we're looking for any of those causes that I just mentioned that might be affecting your health, leading to the symptoms of, say, food allergies that you're dealing with, so that we can do our best to either reverse that, but at least make sure to control the symptoms so you have the real answer versus just some sort of symptom suppressing Band-Aid.
Yep, absolutely. And so let's dive into cutting out gluten for your diet, since the audience here listening is going to be mostly wanting to learn about that. Obviously, if you're celiac or have figured out that you do have a gluten sensitivity, you want to cut out gluten. But what are some other conditions that you see that improve from cutting out gluten that aren't necessarily celiac disease?
Oh man. So I once was at a conference, they talked about a panel, I believe it was from Cyrex. They had 17 different markers of gluten, like different ways it breaks down. And they had started doing little bits of research on all the different markers and how those affect different symptoms. So you have markers that were more associated with brain fog or fatigue because it was more brain oriented, where that specific part caused inflammation. Others were causing rashes. So a lot of us know about the little red dots that can get on the back of your arm. So that can be associated with gluten. But you can also have eczema flares or psoriasis because gluten is triggering the immune system toward an autoimmune condition in your skin. So speaking on autoimmunity, any autoimmunity is going to worsen when your body is under a greater deal of stress. Gluten, for those who are dealing with sensitivity or allergies to it, are going to react negatively in that situation. So if you have any autoimmunity or predisposition to autoimmunity, it can flare because of gluten. I've seen joint pain and inflammation because of the leaky gut that's being caused. So leaky gut leads to all of these inflammatory processes that make your joints tight and achy and swollen. And it can be at a small level or a high level. And then, of course, I didn't even mention getting into the digestive tract and having digestive pain, bloating, cramping, acid reflux, and those types of symptoms. But when you have this food that gets into your body creating an autoimmune reaction, then it causes what's called dysbiosis. Dysbiosis means that it throws off the microbiome or the bacteria in your gut. When that happens, it's a cascade effect. So you now have a weakened digestive tract, so it doesn't defend against parasites, which come in. It doesn't defend against pathogenic bacteria like Clostridias and SIBOs, which then start to take root and grow out of control, or candida yeast fungus that starts to become overgrowth. And that leads to those infections triggering more issues.
Yeah.
So if you're unknown celiac, but you keep working on candida yeast, it might be because of the food that's coming in and you need to fix that problem. So gluten can be the early causation of a lot of other issues that are blamed on other things.
Yep. Yep. Do you think that in order to heal, if you're starting to have any sort of chronic condition, whether that's gut or brain or joint pain, that gluten should be one of the first things that you cut out to see if that causes any improvement? Or is it something that people should investigate other things first and then cross this bridge later down the line?
You know, I go back and forth within my career on this kind of answer because I don't like taking stuff away from people.
Yeah.
And everybody likes something that's made in gluten, right? Like everybody wants either
It's
a,
hard to avoid. It's in literally almost everything, I feel like.
yeah, I mean, everybody wants a donut or spaghetti or a piece of bread or something. Like that's just culturally what most of us have grown up with.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to say just everybody cut it out. But then I sit back and I go, okay, well, what is gluten? Gluten was this protein that was in wheat. And what is wheat? It's been crossbred and hybridized naturally, just to where it's now got more chromosomes, which our body doesn't recognize. So that can create an autoimmune reaction. But then it was genetically modified, which can cause a reaction. But then it was genetically modified to be able to absorb more pesticides and
Mm.
live in environments it's not supposed to live in. So now it can absorb metals from the ground and have more pesticides and chemicals on it. And then when it's harvested, the way you harvest it, because I actually have a practice in a small town where wheat is grown and a ton of it. When it's harvested, it's all harvested across that entire area in the same like 3 or 4 days. So you're
Mm.
talking about thousands of acres harvested. There's not enough silos and places to store that.
Yeah.
So then it's put on the ground and they pour deaminating agent on it to break it down to where it doesn't go bad. But now molds and fungus is growing up, releasing endotoxins into it. And then it's picked up at some point and sent to a processing plant where they use more chemicals and deaminating agents to form it into whatever you're eating, whatever shape that is. And then it's cooked and served on your table. And any one of those processes throughout that entire spiel can
Yeah.
cause it to be a problem. So then I go back to, okay, well, maybe you probably shouldn't have something that's gone through any one of those steps, much less all of those steps. So it's probably something really easy to cut out until you get well. So my journey in practice has been okay, like let's probably cut out gluten and maybe even dairy
Hmm.
until we get you well. And then once you're well and you feel good, you can try it as an elimination style diet
Yep.
piece and see if you have symptoms come back. Because why not? Like, what's the benefit to gluten? Like,
Hmm.
there isn't really any benefit to gluten. It'll spike your blood sugar and cause you to be diabetic quickly. It'll
Yeah.
cause inflammation in your body. The only benefit is it tastes good, maybe. And
Yep.
anymore, you can make any food taste good. So avoid.
Yep. I appreciate the thorough answer. You know, it's interesting how you mentioned kind of like the way wheat is processed and all the issues that can happen with the production, including like mycotoxins and the chemicals that they're putting on it to kind of keep it usable so like you till you can use it. And yeah, it's like you think of like processed foods and like wheat and things like that as like, oh, it's a processed bread and things like that, but you don't think about the processing that happens before it even gets to the processing plant to become the food. So I think that's something that really people should keep in mind. Okay, great. So let's talk about autoimmune conditions, especially like celiac disease. You know, you have to have the genetic component, and then you also often need to have an environmental component that's going to help trigger it on. What are some common environmental components that you see triggering on celiac disease in people?
Yeah, so let's talk about, at least my opinion, of what an autoimmune disease is. It's this diagnosis that your body doesn't know what it's doing and is attacking itself for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually believe that that's what it is, but that's the definition if you really break down what the literature is saying. So to me, it's like, okay, well, why would the body attack itself? Well, the body's going to attack itself when it's either stressed out and there's collateral damage. So it's like, me cleaning my house and I'm running around trying to get it ready for my wife. And oops, I knocked something off the counter and it broke.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the collateral damage of me not paying attention. Well, your immune
Mm-hmm.
system can be like that. Or it's when you're trying to do something. So, let's just talk about a squirt gun fight. Like, you're running around and you got your kids out there and your wife out there, and you're squirting the gun at your son, and grandma walks in the way. There's collateral damage. Well, this is what's called molecular mimicry, where the body actually ends up attacking something that's not supposed to be there because it was in the way. Now, there's a lot of science that we could go into how different bacteria and things purposely do that, but that's how autoimmunity potentially can happen. So with gluten, you get this food in your body, and is wheat itself, is the carbohydrate or the sugar chains that are within wheat a problem? Probably not.
Mhm.
Is the protein gluten itself in a perfectly healthy, non-stressed out, non-genetically modified, non-mycotoxin and all this other stuff involved situation a problem? Probably not. However, when you add all those conditions, the body actually recognizes it as a problem and then attacks it. So with autoimmunity, anytime there's a stressor of any type, and the stressors can be good things or bad things, right? So a stressor can be you worked out too hard, or you had a difficult conversation, you had a trauma. Just as much as it can be mold toxicity, which is a massive stressor for people that really sends your body into a state of fight or flight and causes lots of autoimmune conditions, or parasites in the gut, which cause your body to be on high alert and having a lot of, let's just call it waging war with immune responses in the digestive tract, that now you eat gluten and it comes in and it gets in the middle of that. And you have that situation where it's collateral damage and now it's identified as bad. So you can have those major things, but you can also have the little things, which is it's got a bunch of pesticide on it. Your body sees that as damaging. And as the glyphosate that's on the gluten, which glyphosate is a pesticide chemical that's damaging to your body, that damages the bacteria in your gut. So the bacteria wage war on the gluten. It triggers it. So for those listening and that are like, okay, why am I allergic to gluten? Why is this bad for me? Go back to my spiel I did earlier. And then add that the world's stressful and gluten is a common food. So if you're stressed out and you eat gluten, and gluten also comes with all those other bad things, you're going to probably have a high likelihood over a lifetime to create a negative reaction to it. So I had all that in there just to tell you, like, if you have any autoimmune disease, not just celiac, what's stressing your system triggering? I've seen Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis go to symptom free from removing those stressors, from getting the person into a safe environment away from mold. Teaching them to control their nervous system through limbic retraining and somatic retraining that we use. And then from there, removing the internal triggers, which is the parasites, bacteria, and candida yeast. So that should hopefully help people to understand why gluten might trigger something, how to remove stressors from your lifestyle, because I've also had people who get out of mold, get rid of the parasites, that now can tolerate gluten. Even though it's not necessarily good for you, it doesn't cause the life-changing, life-threatening reactions. Where I've had clients where, you go to the restaurant, and even though that's gluten-free, they prepared it in the same place that gluten was prepared. So there's traces of gluten. And now they're having a situation where we might have to go to the ER. So we've been able to see a lot of significant reduction in those types of reactions where the person can now tolerate the world. And if the little gets in there, it's like, maybe you feel a little swollen, but you're not going to the ER. And it's because we've removed the other stresses so the body can react more appropriately.
Excellent. Yeah, that kind of actually leads into my next question. Like, in your practice, what have you found over time that helps people kind of lessen their reaction to gluten? Like, is it addressing mostly parasites or gut health or treating mold, or what's kind of the biggest piece of the puzzle that helps people make a shift to be able to not be so sensitive to gluten?
It's the big picture that I talk about first. I've got like 4 pillars in my practice that I really think about when I'm putting together a plan. It's, do you live in a place that is safe? Is your water, food, air, and hygiene products, are those clean? Because those are easy things you can do listening to this right now at home. You can go back and do a quick exam of your house. And if you don't know how to do that, my Instagram is full of posts on mold and things to look for in your home, which is just my name. Just look up my name, you're going to find that. So look for your home. Look up EWG's website. Look at your water. Go to looking up, are you eating organic food, and what's in your hygiene products? Are they non-toxic, which can also be found in EWG? That's pillar 1. Pillar 2 is, do you feel safe in that environment? So is your nervous system stressed out? Like, I'll just ask you, as you're listening to me right now, and I'm talking about all this and I'm stressing you out, where are your shoulders at? Are they up here? Can you drop them? If you can drop them, your body's in a state of stress. If I walk up behind you and I just tap you on the shoulder, are you going to jump? you're in a state of stress.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily bad, but that also means that your body is in a state where it's a little stressed out. Maybe you're in fight or flight. Maybe you have more anxiety, irritability. The next one is, do you have deficiencies? So you probably won't know those things just from listening to me today, but that's what I do in my clinical practice is I start to rebuild what's missing. And a lot of people that have been eating gluten that they're sensitive to it, their gut became leaky. Their gut doesn't absorb as well. Their body's under stress. So they've depleted things like sodiums and potassiums. They've lost the ability to methylate appropriately with B12. So you can start adding things like that back in, which start to rebuild the constitution of the body. And that just gives you strength. So now your body can start making better decisions because it's not running on E.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into the fun stuff. This is the question you actually asked. This is the fun stuff. But when you fix the gut by getting rid of parasites, food allergies dramatically lessen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know you're not in mold and get rid of mold toxicity, those are probably my top two things that massively stress out the body and can get people that have significant health struggles so much better. But I start with every one of those people going through the first three pillars to make sure that they're a good possibility to heal from those other things. Because if your body's not strong, it's really hard to heal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'd love to dive a little bit into mold because that may be a topic that this audience has some information on, but maybe not a lot of information. Like, how common is mold in our homes? I know there's some numbers that throw out like over 30% of homes or building in the US have a mold problem. And, then we also have like 30% of the population that has certain genetics that make it hard to detox mold. So how big of a widespread issue is this, and how common is it in people that may have a gluten sensitivity or may have celiac disease?
Oh man, so this is where statistics get fun and scary. So I'm just gonna throw them out there.
Okay, just give us all the info.
Yeah, so here's the reality. I'm not the type of person that wants to be fear mongering. So
Yeah.
the reality is this: every house has mold. I don't care if you live in the desert, on the beach, anywhere. Every house has mold.
Mm-hmm.
Is it enough to matter? Is the question we have to ask. And not every house does have enough that it matters.
Mm-hmm.
About 50% of buildings do have enough that it matters, especially anything with a flat roof. Most houses don't have a flat roof, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And then 25% of the population has a genetic type called HDALR, which is a type where you're very sensitive to toxicities, and mold is one of the big ones that are within that type of genetic makeup, where you don't tolerate mold very well. So we've got to make sure to test for the right things. So there's a significant portion of the population that is really sensitive and probably living in a home that isn't safe.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth.
Yep.
Now, there's not a place on the planet that is either mold safe to live, because every human needs one thing, which is water.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We all need that. So if you need water, then you're gonna have water in your home, and then you could potentially have mold. And mold is just phenomenal at shutting down your immune system's proper function, putting you in a cell danger response, which means that you're highly reactive, which makes you more reactive to gluten.
Yep.
Mold does this by releasing something called mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are it's poison. It just lets them out into the air. When you breathe them in, it's toxic to you and your body gets beat up. So figuring out if you have mold toxicity is something where you can run labs. You can do multiple different labs. You can run a blood panel and look up MSH, C4A, VIP. These are types of blood tests. You can run an organic acid test, and on the organic acid test, there are specific markers that mean mold.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to go deeper into that if you want me to list off all the markers. But then there's also urine mycotoxin tests where you can pee in a cup and see if mold is coming out of you or mycotoxins are coming out of you. Mm-hmm. If so, then you're getting mold in from somewhere.
Yep.
And then you can run all kinds of different testing on your home. But the biggest one is do not trust air samples.
Mm-hmm.
Air samples that you got done when you moved into your house are not good. And no matter if your house is brand new or 100 years old, mold can be there. Yep. Because I just had a guy build a house, and when they built the house, they put moldy boards inside the home. Oof. So you just don't fix that. Like, you sell the house.
Yeah.
Because it's just, that's a big problem. But instead of being afraid of mold, because a lot of my clients, I just don't even want to know. I don't want to know. And I'm like, you need to know, because there are things you can do. You can put air purifiers in your home. You can open the windows. You can fog your home every so often to help reduce the mycotoxins in the air. So there's a lot of things you can do if you're living in mold. So moving isn't always the answer. What I tend to tell people to do is simple. Just run an ERMI, which is an ARMI,
Yep.
get a dust sample collection. You got to make sure that the dust is 4 weeks old, not a year old or a day old. It's gonna be about 4 to 6 weeks old. If it comes back high, meaning you have little stars next to your numbers, meaning it's more than 10 times higher than what it should be, we probably should do something to help you with mold. And if you decrease the amount of mold in your environment, it will likely significantly decrease your reactivity to gluten, food allergies, and also just your stress that you feel from the world when you're in it, because most people that are living in mold have a bit of anxiety or irritability, just brain fog, because their body's being stressed with every breath they take in that home.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And then let's dive a little bit into infections and stuff as well. So mold can obviously be one component that really kind of makes you extra sensitive to gluten and things like that. What about Lyme disease and parasites and other infectious diseases? Do you see that being as common as a kind of trigger sensitivity to things, or do you feel like mold is a bigger piece of that puzzle?
Mold's a big one and it's really common.
Mm-hmm.
Parasites are another big one because parasites get into the digestive tract. 70% of parasites, by the way, are not visible to the human eye.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, when you poop, you don't see them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going surfing through my Instagram page and you're like, I haven't seen any of those things, I'm good. That's not totally true, unfortunately.
Yep.
But parasites, a lot do harbor in the digestive tract because that's where the food is. The larger ones, especially,
Mm-hmm.
they can also get the liver. They're setting off immune responses, which when you have a parasite, it increases eosinophils. Eosinophils is a type of white blood cell that's associated with two things: food allergies and parasites.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have eosinophils over the level of 5, then you likely have a parasite. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily, it shouldn't be, the word belief is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the human body attacks food for no apparent reason.
Yep.
Well, there's a reason. Gluten, I listed the reasons. So it's not that I don't believe in an allergy, it's that I believe there's a reason for the allergy. And if you say none of those gluten reasons are causing my gluten sensitivity, then parasites alone can trigger eosinophils that can tag and target your food. So again, if you go back to it, any of these infections that trigger immune responses, which all of them do at some level, it just depends on how much in your body, they can make you more susceptible to gluten because it's already a trigger for so many people because of all the things I've listed. And mold and parasites are probably the top two. Now, Lyme disease definitely can do it because Lyme can get into your brain, but I don't see Lyme as gut oriented. So it's less likely to be causing triggers in your digestive tract than it is to your brain or your muscle tissues or your blood or other places. So I see Lyme more associated with things like rheumatoid arthritis or MS.
Okay, excellent. And then aside from gluten, what other dietary modifications do you recommend for patients or people that are either sensitive to gluten or having kind of mystery illness? I know you mentioned dairy is one that you should look at maybe cutting out. Where are you kind of on the school of thought of like grains? You know, we talked about like how the wheat is processed and how much room for error there is and causing issues with that. What's kind of your take on other foods or food groups that could be causing inflammation or issues for people?
So within my practice, I have kind of this pyramid of where I start and then how complicated are you? Where are we going?
Yep.
And gluten dairy is like step one. That's almost everybody that has any symptoms whatsoever. I don't care if it's slight skin rashing to a little bit of brain fog or fatigue. Give gluten and dairy free a couple of months to see if you feel better. From there, if we want to be a little more committed, we go whole food organic, gluten-free, dairy-free, which means you eat real food, not out of a box.
Yep.
It's organic and it's gluten-free, dairy-free. That's my next step, which I think is what every person on the planet probably should eat like. So that's just a general statement. When I go beyond that and I start getting into the depths of things, you know, you can do an elimination diet, which can be really effective for you to see where your body is. I'm super custom based, and I know educating online, you know, I don't know the person I'm talking to specifically in the audience, but if I look at generalities, it's like, okay, to decrease your likelihood to react to food, you can go on a histamine diet, which will decrease histamines, which are immune molecules that trigger you to be more reactive. So doing an antihistamine diet for a couple of months can reduce your overall reactivity, which allows your immune system to get calmer. Again, remember, we're gluten-free, dairy-free, histamine, which calms your whole body down. And it gives you the ability to then go, okay, when I'm reduced on histamines, not eating gluten and dairy, do I still have symptoms?
Yep.
And if I still have symptoms, I can start looking at what those symptoms are coming from and doing that investigation. Now, you mentioned grains versus legumes versus meat versus vegetable versus carbs versus sugar. And, there's so many diets out there and there's so many foods out there. I do know that some of my gluten-free celiac people do need to be grain-free. They eliminate grains, they feel significantly better.
I'm one of those.
That's for sure a possibility.
Yeah.
Other people, they can do legumes and the Dr. Gundry work can be really helpful because they react to that. It has been my experience that those who are needing to be fully grain-free or needing to be fully legume-free, or only have, maybe 10 safe foods. Many of the other things that we've talked about, being parasites, Lyme, mold, are playing a role. Because, again, I think that food allergies are real, meaning you do create an immune reaction to a food, but it's because of a reason.
Yep.
Not just the food.
In my own journey, I was down to about 10, 12 foods when I was at the peak of my illness. And once I worked on Lyme and mold and parasites and all those things, now I can pretty much eat everything. It's like foods that don't make me feel great, but I'm not as sensitive to them as I used to be. And I just know to kind of, not eat those too often. Mostly grains, legumes aren't like, I can eat them on occasion, but it's not the best food, but not like an allergy like I had before where my whole immune system was just reacting to all these things. So really addressing those root causes helped me be able to kind of regain my health and eat those things again. It wasn't a forever thing. It was really just dealing with that root cause.
Exactly. Root cause is the way to get well because it's the only way to get an answer.
Exactly. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, do you have anything else to add, or do you think we covered a good amount of information for people to deep dive into today?
I think we covered a ton, especially if we're just talking to people that are, they're at the starting journey of, I don't feel well, gluten might be that trigger. So if you're listening and you're like, holy crap, that's a lot to think about.
Yep.
Just go gluten-free and start there. And just know that there are further options and more information that can continue to help you get better. Like I mentioned at the very start, like you start off with Western medicine and you're like, I'm not feeling well. What do I do next? And there is that journey down to the bottom. Now, if you're that person that's like, I'm going to just go ahead and take the dive and get to the bottom, no matter what you do, your body can only handle so much.
Yep.
So don't be the person that gets on 40 supplements because you heard them from 40 different podcasts and they all said that they're the best things since sliced bread.
Yep.
and you want to get back to bread, so you're going to try them all. So just take it one step at a time, be precise, get good information, run a few labs and talk to an educated provider, because the reality is less is more.
Yeah.
A lot of my clients I'm working with are on 3, 4, 5 supplements, not 30 or 40. They're on a specific diet for them for a period of time until they can get back to a broader diet, because the more things you can eat, the better your digestive tract and microbiome will be.
Yep.
But also know that if you have symptoms, your body is not well. You should not, I'm 37 in like a week. You should not be tired all the time. You should not have brain fog where you can't remember why you walked into a room or you can't pull up names.
Yep.
Skin conditions aren't normal. You should not know that your digestive tract exists unless you had a big meal and you're like, I feel a little bit full. Otherwise, you shouldn't know it exists. You shouldn't feel acid reflux, cramping, pain, burning.
Yep.
You should not have tingling and pain anywhere in your joint, in your body, unless you have had a serious injury. The reason why I'm saying these things is too many people accept IBS as a thing, which is, we don't know why you have stomach issues, so we gave you a title, or fibromyalgia, you have pain and we don't know why. Those are not acceptable things. They are a title that's given to a list of symptoms that have root causes. So for me to just finish this out, it's don't accept less than optimal health, because you can get there, but it is going to take work.
Yep. Well said. I totally agree with that. Amazing. Well, if people want to find you or get more information, what's your Instagram where they can find you, website, and how could they work with you if they're interested as well?
Yeah, so I work with people around the world virtually. We've had incredible success. We've been doing it for a long time, so it's not new, and we love it. We also have a clinic in Kansas City, Missouri.
Mhm.
And if you want to find me, we are Dr. Jabon Moore on any of the social sites and my website. So drjabonmoore.com, or drjabonmoore, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. And we put out information every day about stuff like this so that we can just continue to serve and help. And yeah, so we're there for anybody that needs us.
Awesome. And we'll link to it as well with this video. So amazing. I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing this wealth of information. I hope that this can really help people on their journey and get more information from you on your social too.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.